Welcome to the MSP Owner Podcast, where we deep dive into the journeys of successful managed service provider owners' backgrounds, learning from their challenges, wins, insights to help you build, scale, and even exit your MSP. Today, I'm joined by Wim Kerkhoff, the founder and CEO of two MSPs and a software company focused in the MSP space. Crafty Penguins, which is a pure Linux MSP, Improving IT, which is a traditional managed service provider, and Top Left, which is a software to help visualize tickets and tie into your MSP's PSA. He also hosts a podcast called Agile MSP. So let's jump in. Wim, welcome.
Thank you. Dan, it's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump in. You have a lot going on today. But before we jump into all the things that you're doing, can we first start off with your background and how you got into IT specifically? Like, what was that juncture point for you?
Oh, good question. So this goes back to probably when I was like, my dad got into computers pretty early for his construction business. And I think he was one of the first in the greater family to get them in the house. But I remember him having like a 286 computer. We played some games, 386, 486. And I did games, but tinkering with the menus and how it boots and Windows and stuff, breaking it, fixing it, get into QBasic, different things on the command line back in those days. So that's like mid-90s, I guess. And got into a little bit of programming, just tinkering around, just poking under the hood, just really curious about how the heck does this thing work and can I change it?
So you were a natural tinker and just wanted to solve problems in front of you.
Yeah.
And so how did it go from being something that was personal to, a professional career?
Yeah. So going through high school, I went through a private Christian school and they had no tech courses there at all. Like they had keyboarding and I was bored there and I'm programming and playing with the PC speaker and having fun in class because I could type fast, right? I didn't need to be there. But so I looked at other options and, went to a different school to finish high school, grade 11 and 12. It's a joint venture with a local school district. So you get like your grade 11, 12, and your first year of university in 2.5 years. So to skip the basket weaving and the biology and the chemistry and stuff and just focus on, make sure you got strong math and the physics, and then basically doing programming, like university level programming courses in grade 11. So I really enjoyed that. Get a kickstart into that. And obviously on the side, I'm still tinkering with things, like getting into Linux at that point with like Slackware and Debian and Red Hat, those very early days, like installing from a stack of like 70 floppies, feeding them in, right? I remember installing Windows 3.1 from like, 30 floppies or something? You have to feed them in one at a time.
The floppy disk era is where you got your inspiration to come into IT.
Spent a lot of time with those, yeah.
So did you go down the programming route or like the network technology infrastructure route?
I went down the programming route. So, and that was kind of what that degree had a lot of programming in there. It was a mix. So I did finish a bachelor's degree eventually. It took me like 7 years because I was working part-time, or so basically working full-time and studying part-time. So, and first I'm like, I'm learning enough at work in this like tech startup, and let's just pick the nice courses, right? So, and then eventually I had so many of those. I'm like, let's just push through and finish this degree. But basically my first job was full-time software development. I worked at a startup. So I was like, I think I was right after grade 12. I actually worked from home because it was like a startup working from the founder's basement, making like Linux firewalls. And he had like 5 guys in his basement. He didn't have room for me. So I dialed in from home on dial-up and
work from home during dial-up?
I did 1998, 1999, yeah. So I'd use like 300 dial-up hours a month, something like that. It's nuts because between the work and whatever I did in the evening, I was online all the time.
One of my first jobs was actually as a software developer, and I discovered shortly after I did it that I did not like doing software development, and I was much better at the product side. It's a unique thing. So once you like it, you like it, right? So you're doubling down and doing it more.
Yeah. So I enjoyed those days. Like we did develop, it was all Linux platform. a lot on a Debian OS, lots with Perl, which is kind of dead now. Not many people using it, but I loved it. That's still the language I know the best, because I spent so many years just doing Perl for system automation, DevOps, writing code, web apps. This is like early web development. Like we did JavaScript, but you had nothing like jQuery and Bootstrap and React and all these things. You're just writing JavaScript. So with Postgres, we love the Postgres database. So I was doing database back to web apps, APIs, different things 25 years ago as a junior dev. So did that for like about 3 years as a startup. They ended up, they rebranded and they grew and they raised money, and then they got to like 50 or 60 people selling their firewall appliance, and they ran out of money. They weren't, there's one of the investments that come through, and basically one day the doors were shut. So wow. I got stuck on like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks of pay.
And then is that when you transitioned into more of the pure IT side of things?
It was such a unique thing I was doing. It's hard to find, impossible to find something else like that. So through my network, family and stuff, I got something else that was development, but Windows side. So I got into VB6 and Microsoft Access SQL Server development. So quite different, but I enjoyed that challenge of taking on some existing code. This is like a manufacturing environment, like barcoding, those sorts of things. So very different environment, but optimizing this code, making it work, fixing the bugs from the previous company, and kind of an ERP integration, shop floor automation. So very different environment. Learned a lot, did that for like 2 years. And then that kind of petered out. And I met another friend who was more on the networking system side. He had an IT business. He was doing consulting, kind of, you would say, early managed services, and bit of a data center hosting. So basically helped him with Linux, network engineering, Cisco. So got into a lot of I would call it heavy duty network engineering with BGP and routing tables, ISP, peering kind of stuff. So did that for like 3 years. I really enjoyed that, like wireless ISP network and engineering and reverse engineering and different things. So that was like 100 miles, about 60 miles from my house, I guess. So I did a lot of remote work for that too. I'd drive in like maybe once a week and then work from home the rest.
And at what point did you transition from being an employee to becoming an owner of any company?
So that was 2006. There's a few things going on. One is I was dating a lovely lady in the Netherlands. So we're doing like a remote dating relationship. And we're like, hey, let's get married January 2007. So basically in the July before, like we bought a house, started the renos on that. Then I'm like, I got like 5 courses on my degree. Like I should just really push and finish those before we get married. So I did that in the fall. I basically took like 4 months off from work. After that, like that company is going through a lot of drama, I would call it, because they had done acquisitions. They were bought out. It was toxic, and tried to come back for a bit more money. I'm like, I've been here for 3 years and you haven't given me a raise at all. But they didn't want to bump me $10K. And it was a long drive. I'm like, hey, it's a great opportunity to start on my own. And then my wife was willing to do the bookkeeping because I knew I was going to procrastinate and hate doing the bookkeeping. I got to get so busy with tech work, and I needed support. So she was willing to help with that administration.
How did you have the confidence that you could go and find clients? Because that's different from doing the technical work. Or did you find out that was a...
So remember, I did a simple Excel sheet. I'm like, okay, I'm getting paid for $30 an hour. If I can consult at like $75 an hour, I only need 20 hours a week, right? That kind of gave me some confidence. Like I don't need that much. And through my network, I got busy. Within 3 or 4 weeks, I got busy. So basically that's 18 years ago that I started on my own as a full-time dedicated thing. I actually had another company before that. I started probably 2002. That was an ISP. And but I don't call it my first true company. I started with a partner. It was meant to be like a Saturday thing. And basically it was like filtered internet. So helping families who don't want porn or gambling or other certain content in their house to keep it out. So we started that as a little side thing. He did a lot of the business and the sales, and I managed the server for it. But yeah, so I continued that, but it was kind of taking more and more business, and then eventually I'm like, this is not sustainable. So I pulled a plug on that like 2010 or so. My partner kind of walked away from it. I took it over. But I'm like, you can't double the rates on residential internet just to make money. Like, the growth wasn't there.
So Crafty Penguins, it sounds like was that the genesis of you starting out your business, and it flourished into from a single consulting sort of arrangement? Or when did Crafty Penguins come along?
As a brand, it came later. But that work I've been doing for, like the Linux work I've been doing for 25 plus years. Like, I started tinkering with that in like 97, I guess. And some of our employees even earlier, Richard and Chris and other people, even earlier. So since I started like 18 years ago, we've been doing Linux consulting. So I would say it started then, but I did it all under the Kerkhoff Technologies brand. And I used my name on it. Obviously, my family uses the name in business for many years. Like, my dad's been in construction, Kerkhoff Construction, for like 50 years now. I think 55 years. So I'm like, well, I can't think of a better name. So I like doing different things. I didn't want to put myself in a hole and be just networking or Kerkhoff software development. I don't want to put myself into a box. That's why I kept it really broad, Kerkhoff Technologies. But we did Linux. I did the ISP support. I had clients where we had like 10 gigabit BGP routing. And the big Cisco gear, like this Cisco's that are like 10U in a rack, like programming those babies. Like, to do that, and then the next day I'll do dial-up support. Well, I was all over the place. That's why. So we're recording this beginning of February, and basically in 2 weeks we're launching the rebrand. We'll be improving IT, basically focusing the Windows MSP on that segment. And then, it was Crafty Penguins. We came up with that name about 10 years ago. I'm like, hey, let's came up with the name, and then I did like a Kickstarter, like even a couple $100 online to get a logo and a website. So did that, and then been using it more and more. And then basically like 3 years ago, we made it a legal entity and switched it to its own book. So it's its own QuickBooks, its own team. We moved over the payroll, everything. So it's its own real company now. It was a progression over the 18 years, I guess. But I learned as we got into like Traction EOS, you'll see that. It's off camera here, but I got the book cover on my back here.
Traction by Gina.
Yeah. Okay. Do you follow that or read it?
We implement. I'm a pretty big advocate of any sort of business framework or operating system. Yeah. But yeah, we utilize EOS, and it's been awesome. We have a formal implementer and do the whole shebang. What about you?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of it. So we use it in the businesses. So kind of like 6 years ago, I was like re-implementing it. Because sometimes you fall off of it and you're not doing it. So re-implementing it. And I realized like we're doing three very different things. Like the Linux is a very different market, skill set, team, marketing strategy, everything than Windows. And then we had the software dev side as well with the top left development. And it was watered down and vague, and we just couldn't get the proverbial traction. And when we started splitting it, each had their own VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer. Then we got more clarity, more momentum, dedicate the resources, don't be working in two companies. So basically over to...
So really it comes down to, it sounds like focus and clarity around where you're going, and EOS helped create
Absolutely,
that.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ben Tigelaar, the host of MSP Owner Podcast and the CEO of Datatel, an IT managed service provider with 35 employees. The mission of this podcast is simple: to have authentic conversations with IT owners about their journey, how it started, the challenges they've faced, and where they're going next. Every episode, I personally walk away with a new actionable item to strengthen my own business. But a quick word about my company, Datatel. We are actively acquiring MSPs who align with our service and culture. So if your company is generating between $1 and $10 million of revenue, I want to talk to you. But wait, you're probably thinking, why me and why Datatel? First is, I get you. I understand the challenges MSP owners face, being one myself, feeling overworked, overwhelmed, constantly being on call, struggling to bring in new business. I have the solutions and people in place to address these pain points. Second is culture. We run our business on EOS. entrepreneurial operating system, which has been transformative for our employees and clients alike. I believe that building a great company comes down to finding and retaining great people who are in the right seats. Everything else is noise. If any of this resonates, it probably means we're a fit and we should be having a conversation. Until then, let's get back to the show. So you have these, talk about you have 3 different companies going on at once. It sounds like you had a bunch of shared resources. You weren't really getting the traction that you wanted. What were the things that made it apparent that it wasn't working?
I looked like I had a developer who was like half his time on top left writing code and half the time like doing Linux server work for clients. And you need your billable hours because that's kind of funny to development, but we couldn't really get anywhere on the development. And that was one example. And then just not to focus on the marketing and the leadership, like my time was fragmented too much. So everywhere, like the vision statements were vague. Just the budgeting wasn't clear. Nobody was set up to win that way. And it's not obvious when you're in it, right? You're just fighting to do your best. But it's quite a while ago now. Are
you the visionary in each of those, or do you have a separate visionary and integrator with each of those companies?
That's changed because firstly, I'm very highly visionary. Like if you run the assessment, I'm like 90 visionary, integrators more like maybe 50 or something like that. So then the model was, okay, I have an integrator COO in each company. But really, these guys have elevated that they're running the vision now. So they do their quarterly and annual planning, and I'm not in those meetings. I come in and they kind of show me what they've come up with. But they basically taken what I did over the last, 10, 15 years. Because I did separate vision statements for each one, and they've embraced it and extended that much more than I can. I'm not in the space. Like I'm not talking to clients about the 365 or about their Linux servers or what have you. Like I can't be the visionary anymore.
How did you get those folks aligned to step up over time? Because I assume it was you're heavily involved at the starting and then over time it progressed. How does that work for someone who ultimately wants to, they got multiple companies, they're spread thin. How do you make that transition from being spread thin to ownership is in this spot and you feel comfortable as an owner letting go?
Yeah, it's a process. There's push and there's pull. Sometimes you got to push people, but you also have to invest in them. They've got to grow, and sometimes they got to be pulling it as well. But if I see that they're raising their hand and asking questions about certain things, then I'm basically like, "Hey, do you want to take this on?" And they're like, "Well, they kind of got to say yes, right?" So I had that in Crafty Penguins. We had a fellow we hired like just before COVID. He was actually remote and as an engineer, but he saw things not happening and raised his hand. So gave him more things. He ended up doing technical account management, managing the team. And then they questioned about how we're selling and the pricing. So he got into sales and the packaging and stuff. So we streamline that. And now he's running it. He's really like the acting CEO and he's a business partner. But that was like a 3-year process. Joined pretty quick. Now, and then the other company, I've got the fellow who's like the president on it now. He started as a junior tech 11 years ago. Right. And he's just got into process. He loved that and improving, making things more efficient. So
I'm curious about how do you structure the long-term incentives for them? Are you awarding equity? Or are you creating a bonus structure? How does that work? And how have you aligned that historically?
Depends on the company. So some there's equity, some that's like profit sharing. Basically, I put in a pretty good profit sharing plan about 4 or 5 years ago. Did a lot of research. There's a lot of books like Ownership Thinking, The Great Game of Business, and just literacy. So being transparent with the books and what drives profit and margin. So that's been helpful. But I don't like to bonus on billable hours. A lot of things that drive the wrong behaviors. So we look at, that profitability, and then a part on is the MRR, the managed MRR increasing.
I feel like that's a really challenging part of the business is letting go of that leadership and ownership. Seems like you haven't had much of a problem with it. You were like, it was a natural path. I think for some people, they're like, control, control, control.
Well, it's a bit of necessity. Because in hindsight, it looks easier. But a lot of times, I did hold on to too much. But then I'm the bottleneck, and I realized it's a false sense of control and power when you're not letting go. It's holding us back. So yeah, sometimes it's been, I worked with a lot of coaches and mentors and peer groups, and that's been really helpful to be challenged on those blind spots. To look at my mental health and where I'm overwhelmed, and like, you've hired all these people, like, why are you not leveraging them? Giving them requests, giving them challenges to lean into, making demands, because the owner should not be the bottleneck ever. Like, that's just crazy.
Did you ever struggle with with having too much on your plate, with being overwhelmed? Did you run into that and then figure out you have to do something different, or?
Yeah, it's been there all along, and it's still up and down. It's still the thing, right? Did you let go of things? Okay, let a lot of things go in the MSP, but then let's say on top left, it's like I'm still maybe more like Velcro than I need to be. I'm still working on that. But I had a real overwhelm moment like 4 years ago. Like, I remember the first year of COVID, got to the end of the summer, and I'm like, I couldn't be in a meeting. Like, there's no way I could have had a conversation like this. I'd literally fall apart in tears. Even a basic meeting about a sales deal with my sales rep, I'd like fall apart in tears. Just overwhelmed, just bad mental health. Don't know exactly what it was, but I had to make major changes in my workload, my schedule, my health. The weight I had lost, I got all back, because previously I'd lost like 40 pounds. And then I was like back to where I was. So I'm like, I got to clean up, get the garbage out of the diet, look at my workflow, all these things to build capacity, deal with stress. So I'm in like a night and day difference mode now.
What were like the one or two biggest things that you changed in order to go from how you're feeling, which sounds a bit like despair, to getting better?
Everyone looks for like the one thing, but it's really stacking a lot of the right activity. I probably changed at the time, I think I was like, you're in such a deep hole that if your body can't handle the stresses, you shouldn't be doing an intense workout. You shouldn't be running. You shouldn't be biking. Like, just walk in fresh air. All right. So that's change some things like that just to get out of that hole. Like cutting out sugar, cutting out dairy, just cleaning up the diet, cutting out the junk that had crept in, watching to sleep, decreasing tech stimulation. So like going on a walk, but then listening to a podcast, not as good as just a walk, fresh air, leave your phone at home. All right, those things. So I'm still doing those things today. Is just a lot of habits. And then just getting good at recognizing those warning signs of like, how am I really doing? And am I feeling anxiety, or how in control of my work am I, or is the work in control of me? There's a lot of getting ready, recognizing those warning signs around, am I actually at a peak level of mental health? Am I in a kind of in the middle gray zone, or am I getting to the danger zone?
You referenced talking to, like, having an outlet and knowing when you're like, are there people that you go to when you're going through these big struggles? Is it family, friends, peer groups? Like, where is your outlet typically when you're like, man, this is really hard and I'm going through something?
I've been working with a psychologist for the last 5 years. He's like a business coach. He's been doing this for like 40 years, master's in psychology. So I have a call with him every single week. It used to be about 90 minutes. I kind of tightened it up to 60 minutes now. But basically it's like talking about the week and my mindset. And he's very intuitive on these things. So within a seconds or the first minute of the call, we dig into one of these things. It's just how you start a conversation is huge. Like, you ask somebody how they're doing and they're like, not bad. Well, there's something to dig in there, right? Like, you should feel amazing. And then get into that. And they're like, I didn't get done what I'd hoped to do today. And then dig into that. Or some conversation you had with an employee or a colleague or a client, and dig into that. And look at limiting beliefs, mindsets, structures. Are we set up to win? Do you have the right attitude, perspective on these things? So that's been really helpful. I think it's come a long ways. Just with that.
That's awesome to hear, because I have done the same thing in the past, and I meet monthly with a I would call him a business psychologist. He's a friend, but he's a trained psychologist and he's an investor and entrepreneur. And so I talk to him about this sort of stuff and like limiting beliefs that we have around ourselves and the things that, we run into in our daily life that are sometimes difficult to tell other people about as like owners. And so that's been a huge unlock for me as well. And honestly, just brings a lot of comfort and man, I'm not alone. So Crafty Penguins is a Linux MSP. How much revenue do you guys do annually?
We're about 3 million in Crafty.
3 million?
Yeah.
And then the Improving IT MSP, are you about the same size, roughly 3 million?
About neck and neck, yeah.
Wow. And then your software, I'm interested to hear about the software that you're building. It sounds like, is it like pre-revenue or are you generating revenue?
Revenue. Yeah, we've been in market.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, we have 150 MSPs active on the product.
Wow. Yeah. Tell me, give me your 60-second what does it do for MSPs?
Yeah, so we're helping MSPs fix their project and their service. So amazing results. So one of our clients, they improved their project efficiency by 57% applying these methods. And there's the tool, which we sell, but there's also the methodology behind it of agile, lean, and Kanban that come out of software development. These are things I learned like 25 years ago with Scrum and Agile over the years and applying that in the MSP space. Such a huge game changer of getting more done with the people we have, impacts profit, valuations, everything. So run
me through it. Like my MSP Datatel, we run waterfall. We tried doing an agile methodology and it did not work that well for us.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it was a mindset or methodology issue, right? But waterfall has worked for us. How do you talk to me about what the value is of switching to an agile methodology within the MSP space?
Yeah. So how many projects do you manage on an ongoing basis?
20 to 35.
How many of your projects, if you plan the project out in advance with your waterfall, your Gantt timelines and stuff, how many of them deliver on time and on budget?
70%.
It's better than average. Most of us are late. And then I guess how often you have to explain like project delays to clients?
I guess I feel like it's part of being in a client account business. Like there's always going to be changes as it relates to what we're doing, especially I mean, great point, but I think we do that frequently, but we also say at the upfront, hey, this is an estimated time frame. This is what we're going to do. We're going to keep you up to date. And when there are changes, we're going to let you know ASAP. And then we adjust that expectation.
How much time do your managers or coordinators spend coordinating the work? Scheduling, communicating?
Full-time project manager plus a junior PM. And they probably spend, that's vast majority of their job is communication internally, externally, getting resources in the right spots.
Yeah. And then how many engineers in the project team?
5.
Yeah, I'd say that's a lot of overhead for a team of that size. With the agile methods, the idea is you're scheduling less. You're not abusing scheduling as a way of prioritization. So focusing what are the highest value things and get that team hyper-focused on getting those out the door to the client. So that would be kind of the value proposition is, could you double the amount of projects you do with the same PM and coordinator?
I'm sure there's a methodology education that you have to do with this, right? Because how do you do that? How do you make sure that goes well? Because it feels like it's important to your product adoption too.
Yeah. So we've developed probably like 4 major things. So we're helping. We do initiatives out of the gate. We onboard everybody. Like you can get up and going with this pretty quick. Like get into that first year. Like we're going to help you set up your Kanban boards and get the basic flow going. Like an hour onboarding call. We do the rapid implementation where we bring in with basic professional services over like 30 days to really look at your what PSA are you on? ConnectWise, Autotask?
ConnectWise.
Yeah. So look at your ConnectWise, your boards, your statuses, and then how do we design the boards for this and how you're doing your projects. And then get your daily huddle going. That's where a lot of these habits get established is in the daily huddle. It's not in getting people to watch hours of videos, but in that 10, 15-minute huddle, you're driving the behaviors of what's the most important thing, what's blocked, and how do we unblock these project tickets. So we actually come in and coach your team on running the daily huddles. So that's like a 30-day project if you get the time in your calendar to show up to the meetings, right? So that's a big one. We have Agile certification courses. So we bring in like an enterprise lean Agile trainer, guys really top level on that, and doing like the 2-day training seminar kind of format stuff, like Scrum Master training, that sort of thing. Like how do you get the best of waterfall, the best of Agile and Kanban? These are things are not enemies. You can dovetail them.
One of the common complaints I hear from other owners, at least, is those who try to implement Agile is they basically it feels like they lack visibility and insights into how things can get done and how quickly, and that the end result is always a moving target for them. Is that like the wrong way? Are they doing something wrong, or are they right in some way?
I think there's a false sense of control when you see these nice timelines. So if you actually freeze that and say, hey, here's my 3-month timeline, this project is going to finish in end of April or whatever. And you freeze it, right? Put it in the drawer, come back end of April. How much of that actually happened? Right? I think a lot of it has changed as well. So Agile, we're focused on the velocity and the throughput. Like how many tickets are actually getting done? How much value is getting delivered? It's not just about, the number of tickets, but how much is getting out, and how do we get that up over time? How do we get more efficient through, do we automate more? Is there better requirements on the ticket? Maybe we did too much. We call it gold plating. And that can happen when we give ourselves a bunch of time to do a project. We can do too much, like literally gold-plated laptop kind of stuff. And whether it's a 365 migration or security project, we did too much value that was not necessary. So if we can streamline all those things, eliminate waste, and just get that throughput up on the real value. That's what the conversation we like to have is reducing the multitasking. Because when you're switching between all these projects, which is typically what happens, is like we're trying to optimize the calendar and utilization, which is the wrong game to play. Because then when you move between 5-10 projects as an engineer or even as a PM, that context switch is huge. Like you add 20% to everything you do. So if you can do one project at a time, you've already saved 20% across everything you do, which is going to outweigh having a nice looking schedule. So look at that. And also when you switch tasks and your quality, you make mistakes because you're like, where was I? You're getting interrupted halfway. So a lot of things there.
You did something interesting with your businesses. You started out with 2 MSPs, and then you developed a piece of software to help, MSPs selling into the MSP space. So what did you just run into a problem yourself, or why did you start Top Left?
This goes back to probably 10, 12 years ago. I was growing my MSP, doing the marketing, following like true methods for like operations. And we worked with C-level operations as well. We worked with Robin Robbins on outbound.
Yeah, who hasn't worked with Robin and Robbins?
Everyone's tried it or kicked the can, right? Some people get great results. But we were actually doing that. We signed up clients. We were getting results. So I had somebody on the phones, getting meetings, Zoom networking, had an outside sales guy who was doing meetings, and we added some really nice clients and really nice proposal, doing the shock and awe box, all these things. Really nice presentations. I think the marketing, the sales was good. And then we bombed on the delivery. I remember the one project I quoted at 200 hours. That's with some padding, right? Like 170, you pad it to like 220 or something, add some buffers. And it was way more complicated. The techs did more work. They're like, these workstations are such a mess. They're not on the domain and stuff. We need to like format them and like do new Windows installs. And just like, okay, it makes sense. Let's do it. It ended up taking 800 hours, that project. And
wow,
I don't think I got any more revenue from them. I don't think they paid any more. And they were obviously impacting their business because we're in and out and it's dragging on. And the network was complex. There's a car dealership and like 2 car dealerships. They wanted to share resources, but they each got very different VPN requirements with their manufacturers and stuff. It was crazy. So doing that, and these other clients came on. They were also impacted. So basically, we added like 4 nice clients that year, and we like ended up losing all of them because we couldn't manage the projects with the service, because the same people are doing projects and service and fixing the issues that come out from the projects. And And we're on ConnectWise. So we have all the billing, all the tracking is fine. We're tracking all our time. And there's so many tickets. And it's like, we were just chasing our tails on who was complaining the most, the squeaky wheel. I hired a PM, like a senior PM. The guy, he's like, I used to get paid $160,000 a year for doing this. And I've got 40 years of experience. He was in his 60s. I'm like, okay. And he came in for cheap. He was willing to help us, right? He's like, but after like 10 months of that, we were no better off. And the clients didn't have any more confidence in us. So kind of let him go.
Did he not have what it takes in hindsight, or did you have the wrong framework in place? Like, why didn't he work out? It seems like he had experience.
I think it's like a culture issue, probably core value kind of issue. Just
okay.
Not that I questioned honesty or integrity. I'm just doing, I think, good things that we maybe would have worked in another environment. And I was probably maybe a bit too hands off with it. I don't know. Also, I haven't mentioned that yet. I had another company going throughout that period, which was like SD-WAN software for like bonded internet. So I was spending like 2 days a week on that business and not as much in the MSP as it probably needed me. So I ended up selling my shares, and then my partner bought me out like 6-7 years ago on that. But basically we had basically in our office, we had like another room just for the devs on this software product. So I was watching that. They were using Jira and Scrum and the agile methods. I'm like, they're calm, they're cool, they're collected, they're improving their flow, they're doing all these methods, getting the projects done, getting features out the door. And I'm like, we got this chaos in the MSP, and they're using Jira and the nice tools and visualizations. They're doing it kind of by the book. Literally, we bought the Scrum book, and Matt and I, who was the dev team lead, he's implementing it there. So I'm like, how do I do that with ConnectWise and the MSP? Now, obviously, you can't really time box. If things are broken, you can't wait for a 2-week sprint, right? You have to go do it. So I'm like, okay, a Scrum won't work. We need to do a Kanban method. But you couldn't do it in ConnectWise. And I'm like, we can't go to another tool. So I built like a proof of concept with Excel with some SQL queries against ConnectWise. I'm like, hey, this has potential. So I put a developer on it for like 50 hours to build a web app, and that's how we got started.
So have you used the SQL database access via ConnectWise before?
Oh, I've done a ton with it. Yeah, very comfortable with that.
What's been your experience with that? I've been thinking about building a product that would need. I haven't done that. I'm just curious what your initial.
It only works if you're on-prem, like self-hosted. If you're on the cloud, you don't really get direct live SQL access. They might give you a snapshot if you pay them more money. You might get like a 24-hour snapshot. I haven't looked at that. Some people complain about their database. I think it's actually pretty good. They give you ERD, like documentation on it. You can go to SQL Query Analyzer, whatever the tools are on SQL Server to explore the database. And they got good views, store procedures. It's fast. So I could get out of it what I needed to. The only thing, if you're starting a new app, I wouldn't recommend it because it doesn't work with cloud.
How are you getting access and integrating into clients right now for this purpose?
100% with the REST API.
You're using their REST API.
Yeah, we use the API, yeah. And that works great. It's good. Like we also support Autotask, not as good. And we're adding Halo now, and it's horrible. Halo API is awful.
Yeah, they're good at some things, but they've got to be behind in some other things, right? It's just how it is, probably.
It's all relative. You can get the job done. And what I would say is they are very responsive. So you're like, hey, how does this work? Or this is weird. They go and fix it and change it. So I really appreciate that attitude.
That's interesting. And how did you get up to speed on the ConnectWise, integrations? And because the whole thing is going to be built on ConnectWise, right? Like for your first clients.
Yeah. So for top left. We started with ConnectWise. That was like 10 years ago. And then about 5 years ago, we launched the Autotask support. So that's like the equal class citizen. And now we're doing the Halo. And basically we're rebuilding it so that it's easier to support any PSA. So just more shared code and a whole new UI design. So that's coming out now. So because we want to support any PSA in the industry.
So you've got 3 businesses that you're working on.
Yeah.
Which one are you most excited about?
I guess it's always what I'm working on right now, right? Which is top left. And I just see the impact on the lives and the teams and mental health and profit. Like, there's just so many upsides to it. But there's a challenge because there's a kind of an education challenge, and we talked about that just now, right? Like, hey, waterfall and what's in it, right? What's in it for the business? Because you can plug in tools, and everyone's kind of skeptical of more tools that they buy and then don't use, right? But how do you get the real results? Like, what's the impact? And I think it's like 10% the tool and 90% this education side on, because many people get into this. That's been my story. Like, my degree was not project management. I had 1 course on PM. My degree was not business. I had like maybe 1 or 2 courses on finance. And here we're running these pretty big budgets now. We've got like 40 plus employees. So there's a lot we learn on the way. And that's true for most people in this space. Like, good technicians get promoted to be team leads, project managers, and they're not set up to win on that. So everyone's just kind of crying out for leadership and examples and inspiration on this.
Have you thought about investing more in the education portion and even like a community aspect for what you're doing?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I'm working on now is actually running community events and even in person. So working on in the Vancouver area, running, hosting like a 1-day, I don't know what the right word is, but like a meetup, I guess. I don't want it to be about us selling product. It's not a sales or marketing event for us. It's all education, helping mid-level managers, the PMs, the coordinators, managing partners, if you will, around these efficiencies and throughput. How do you impact culture and the way people work? So just building community, and it doesn't have to be us presenting. Just bring in partners, clients, people who are making a difference. And so I've been doing that. A lot of our webinars actually bring in our clients to speak, and they share their story. Like Tennille came on in the fall and talked about how she was able to phase out her dispatcher completely. All right, and double utilization of technicians in her team. So she just, that's how she did it, and the impact and the results speak for themselves. Like, teams happier, more fulfilled. And we're talking about these changes, and a team of like 10 people, this is like 150, 200K a year impact.
Wow. It seems like a perfect opportunity to like figure out how to set up an online community too. Because if I was a PM, I would love to join like a private community where I could ask questions. I could talk to other PMs to learn about what the best practices are. Hey, I'm running into this. Man, that would be awesome. I would get my PMs to join.
So what's the best platform and structure for that you've seen? What would you like to see?
I would take a look, if I were you, at a platform called Circle. That's one of the main community platforms, but it's really easy to roll up. You can have a bunch of educational content in there. It allows you to, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do it. You can even create a Slack channel, right? Like, there's a ton of, and maybe Slack's the better, because you want to geared more towards the, the nerdy PM side, right? So something like that, where there's just bringing people in the same spot, create a bunch of value in there, maybe have lead-ins for like, say, hey, I've got PM templates located inside this community, join, check it out. People are talking about stuff that they're going through every day. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I've tried a couple things and it hasn't taken off. So I've got to iterate on that again. We offered it to existing clients. We had something like Circle, and that we invited basically we have a challenge, like a coaching challenge. We call it a 3-week challenge for completed tickets. So I get your ticket counts down like at least half in like 3 weeks. And we invited those people to the forum, and nobody got in there. I opened it up to all clients, like a Slack channel to all our clients, and it was kind of like crickets. But it's something you're suggesting something broader that's not top left specific, but just an agile community.
Just think anyone in your ideal client profile, right? Which is PMs and MSPs and people who want to do, right? Build it specifically around that function, right? Your projects suck. They're never on time. They're really costly. It makes clients mad. Here's the community for how the best practices and the people are doing it. And they're sharing real-time things, right? So think of it as like similar to like you and I are in probably other peer groups, right? Like I'm an EO. You're probably in something else, but I go there to talk to my peers. But a lot of our employees don't have that option or opportunity. And so I'm finding one for my COO right now that's a similar sort of thing. I'd probably do it for my PM if there's a PM community available, and I'd probably even pay for it, honestly. But you could use it as just free. Free, and you get people to jump in, and then you know that 10% of those people will be interested in your solution, and the other ones, it's just free value. So it's a lead gen magnet, and just provide as much value as you possibly can to those folks.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that would dovetail nicely with the in-person stuff as well. So the online community, and then regionally outreach to get people. So we're targeting our province of BC, is reaching out to every single MSP and say, hey, would you be interested in the local event? So
yeah, and then when you're reaching out to folks, right, it's not, hey, come try my product. It's, hey, go get a bunch of value for yourself for free. Your opt-in rates will be much higher, and you're actually going to create a relationship with them.
No,
so
I love that.
I only charge 15% recurring on anything you make off of this. So I'll send you a bill later.
All right, then. I'll get you a coffee.
Sounds good. Anything else you wanted to dive into, or anything we missed as it relates to your story, your businesses right now?
We could always get into a lot more things. I know we've covered a lot there. It's probably a good spot to leave it there.
Sounds good. We'll save it for next time then. Well, Wim, I really appreciate you jumping on and diving in. I loved hearing about your story, and man, doing a lot of stuff. And I've got a couple of inspiration things that you've given me, honestly, as it relates to the different stuff that I'm working on, and being able to craft the vision and having complete ownership of each of those, different units. So honestly, I'm going to take some of that and apply it to my own business. So awesome. Thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
All right. You're welcome.
All right. Talk to you soon, man.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you next time.